grow companies could open sooner, but he says it would not be able to supply the entire state.
It's just a matter of identifying the proper zoning.
So why would we not be able to, grow our own cannabis and not have to deal with as many prescribed medications? Come on now, you know it's a scam. Uh-oh, see, Heather must be done with her video. Shout out to Heather for pulling up. Appreciate that. Like I said, let's keep it rolling.
Requirements and having these municipalities develop those rules for implementation because none of that has been done yet.
So counties, zones, tribal areas, it's a lot of stuff that actually goes into it, especially when it comes to what's happening down in Minnesota. And I'm going to get into some of those tribal lands and the res in a bit, but it seems that Minnesota might be a step closer to having a recreational herb launch. Check it out.
Well, tonight, Minnesota is 1 month away from a huge step forward in opening its first recreational marijuana shops. It has been a long and bumpy process since it became legal 2 years ago. Julie, on June 5th, the state's Office of Cannabis Management will hold its first lotteries for business licenses, including growers and social equity retailer applicants that then could even open its doors just a month later. Some flowers are easy to spot in the spring.
30 different gummies, we have 50 different drinks.
It's harder to find the smokable ones at CBD shops across the state.
I am partial to the relax with the hiatus.
Like the one Sarah Bear and Philly Maudlin own.
We have people every single day come in here and ask, when is flower going to be ready? When is flower going to be ready? They call us.
Minnesota is still setting up its recreational market since lawmakers legalized it 2 years ago. A process lawyers say is laden with lawsuits, delays, and opposition.
Every state has its own bumps along the way. We've had maybe more than most, but I think we're so close to market launch at this point that all of this, I think, will be a distant memory very soon.
The first licensed lotteries won't be for another month for growers and manufacturers.
This is Delta 9.
Sarah Bear already securing hers, one of some 200 social equity applicants now pre-approved, including veterans and people living in high poverty areas.
We have a preliminary license approval, but there's still multiple steps that we have to go through. So it makes everything very up in the air.
There's zoning requirements, city registration, and setting up a space.
So finally, Minnesota is one step closer to opening up its doors for recreational herb. Now, you guys may have heard earlier on in the video when they mentioned that despite the fact that there's no open recreational dispos in Minnesota, you can actually go and get your stuff on tribal lands at the reservation. And that goes hand in hand with this article, which says Minnesota signs its first of a kind agreement allowing the Indian tribe to sell legal herb outside of the reservation. Now, this landmark legislation signed by Governor Tim Walz allows the White Earth Nation to operate up to 8 retail herb stores across the state of Minnesota. And some of you guys in different states, for example New York, may be familiar with these types of reservations and these types of tribal nations. But if you're not, this will explain it in a nutshell.
For the USA, tribal affairs are often an interesting subset of legislative confusion. There are 4 sub-federal levels of government that are recognized: city, county, state, and tribal. In Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution, it recognizes Native American tribal areas on the same interactive level as nations. Congress shall regulate commerce and enter into treaties with foreign nations and Indian tribes. First, let's break down the numbers. Today, there are 574 federally recognized tribes, and as for land allotment, 325 reservations exist throughout the lower 48 states. This means that they have a legal relationship with the United States, bound by things like treaties and executive orders. These reservations technically fall under federal land, however, the tribes are given a degree of autonomy, and not all federal laws apply to them. Some of them prefer to call themselves nations rather than reservations, like Navajo and Hopi. This also means they hold rights like being able to elect their own leaders, have their own police forces, courts. They pay U.S. federal taxes, but not necessarily state or state sales tax, depending on the reservation. They make their own laws, like some reservations don't sell alcohol, others do. They can levy their own taxes to their own people however they want within their own reservation.
So you guys can see how these Indian tribal lands operate a little bit autonomously from the rest of the states. And actually, about 10 years ago, the U.S. Department of Justice stopped prosecuting recreational herb cases on these Indian territories.
Tonight, controversy over plans to sell marijuana on local Indian reservations. The Department of Justice changing how it enforces marijuana laws on Indian lands, but the new policy causing a lot of confusion and concern.
Because so many states are making forms of marijuana use legal, the Department of Justice plans to stop prosecuting the recreational growing and use of marijuana on Indian reservations.
Everything's so much up in the air right now. This has struck us just like it has everybody else.
The new Department of Justice policy caught a lot of people off guard, including the Seneca Nation of Indians, who had this statement.
And so what we're trying to do now is just